Click it once it goes green.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with a moment of silence. Following Barbara Ann Stetzel, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Sharon A. Gerhart, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Suzanne Warner, a former employee of the North Syracuse Central School District. Kaylee J. Morrell, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Lester E. Wilson, who attended schools in the North Syracuse Central School District, and Mary R. Webb, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Okay, thank you.
I say a few words about those people.
Absolutely, yes.
It's always sad when we lose some people that either worked for our school district or attended our schools. But I want you to know that our school district, if not the only school district, does this at their board meetings. It started way back when. Connie probably could tell us when, but I think this is an honor that you do this at your board meetings, and also that the flag is at half staff for everybody that leaves us that was part of this school district. Barb Stetzel, as you said, was a graduate of North Syracuse. And a little story I would like to tell you. Barb's been very, very sick, and she was in Florida. Because of the long weekend that we had for Memorial Day, Mr. Bowles, grandson wanted to see his grandmother for the last time, and he flew down. He was able to do that because of that extra day. The one special thing was she wanted to see her grandson graduate this year. And because of the technology that we have, she saw that. She saw her grandson go across the stage and receive his diploma before she left. And I just think that's a great story for us. And then the other one, a good friend of mine from church, Mary Webb, who again graduated from the school district, did a lot for our church, Emmanuel Lutheran. But the story I want to tell you about Mary Webb was at a memorial service on Saturday, there were over 50 people from Liberty Resources. Mary was a supervisor at Liberty Resources, and I made sure I went over and talked to them because they've done so much for our district, going in our schools, helping students and teachers with mental health. And I thought that was an honor that they came to honor her. So thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. We'll begin with our data privacy and protection presentation. And if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, first, thank you very much. We're going to kind of approach this as a team because this work is very much about the way we interact together daily and throughout the school year to maintain our data and keep it safe and secure. The first thing is, this is an overview of some of the challenges we face, the scope of the work, as well as the resources we have available for us and the process by which we do the work. I'm going to start with the first slide. If we can advance one slide. is really the challenge is managing on a daily basis, monitoring on a daily basis, and securing our data and data systems. And this can only be done by taking an active team-based approach. We work sometimes around the clock, sometimes at different hours, monitoring and looking at our system and the way it works and ensuring that it's up and running, it meets our needs, and it keeps our data safe. The first part of this is I'd like everybody to take a minute to introduce themselves so the board's aware of who we are and the roles that we play in this approach.
I'm TJ Adams. I'm the senior IT network administrator. I work on a lot of the infrastructure stuff like the server and the network and everything that keeps everything running in the background.
I'm Missy Mary. I'm a junior systems administrator. I've been with the district since 2002, with the IT department since 2005, and up at the DO since 2014.
I'm Sherry Hamilton. I'm the systems administrator here. I wear two hats, an administrative hat and a technical hat. On the administrative side, I support and lead the desktop and user support personnel in our DO office, as well as across all of our school buildings. And I'm the liaison between our department and the building administrators. Along with TJ, I work on setting department priorities for budgeting and device replacement. And on the technical side, I'm responsible for desktop and user support, which is all the operating system deployment, software updates and deployment, as well as triaging all the help calls that come from our users on the IT portal and ensuring that they get given to the correct personnel.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Rich Herholtz. I'm a network communications analyst here in the department. I just recently joined the staff from the private sector earlier this year in April. I come from managed security services, data security services, network services background. My responsibilities as a network communication analyst is to make sure that everything can talk to each other. So make sure that all the campuses can talk to each other, coming back to the DO and to the high school. Some of my initiatives are to work on our network security and increase our defenses against cybersecurity threats. Some of the more detailed initiatives that are surrounding that is I'm going to be working with a co-serve product that we're getting some cybersecurity services through a local consulting company. They're going to be helping us with some services and some remediation based around that. I'll be talking more about that on my slide.
And you guys know me, Don Keegan. I have had the privilege of, over the last 10 years of working very closely with IT as the group reports up through me. And I have been blessed with some amazing people that have done some amazing stuff, and as we are excited to share with you tonight.
And I'm Chris Lay. You all know me as well. My role in this as a data protection officer is ensure that we're fully compliant with Ed Law 2D, that our systems are safe, we're protecting personally identifiable information, and that we're continuously looking for threats or concerns or areas in which we need to do a better job protecting it. So the first slide speaks to what is Ed Law 2D, and it went into effect April 2014. The focus of the statute is really to ensure privacy and security of personally identifiable information of students and staff, particularly related to classroom teachers and principals. So what student, teacher, principal data must be protected? An overview would be names. It could be emails, names of students' parent or other family members that we secure, addresses of the student's family, any personal identifier, such as student social security number, student ID number, biometric record, medical records, other indirect identifiers, such as their date of birth, place of birth, mother's maiden name, and any teacher principal data, evaluation data. So what we do is we look at these areas as well as others that evolve as we go through this process, and we do our best to make sure that those things are secure, that we're not sharing it, that our staff is trained and fully knowledgeable about what personally identifiable information is, how to protect it, how we can do little things, even just protecting our emails, not leaving our desktops open, things of that nature, but also just questioning things or reaching out if they're not sure. And as we move forward this year, we have plans to really intensify our efforts to educate our staff, to remind them of the best practices as we do this work. So the scope of our infrastructure, over 500 software programs, and even within these programs, they're continuously changing. We're vetting them. We're going through a process this summer, looking at all of them, identifying which ones do require personally identifiable information, requesting data privacy agreements with those vendors who we're working with. It's an ongoing process, and we'll be communicating next week with our teachers, let them know where we are with this update. And we want to make sure that our teachers have access to the software programs they need, but also that we're confident that they will keep our data secure, or that we have an agreement with them should there be a concern or a breach. The other part of this is there's over 10,000 users in our district, which is quite a few to monitor. And then in addition to that, we will have 11,000 devices, desktops, Chromebooks, as well as a variety of other items. So the scope is large and it's challenging. And part of our work over the last few years is just really managing it, getting our hands wrapped around it, and having an inventory of where those items are. And I think we've made some significant improvements in those areas, and we'll share a little bit about that as we move forward.
So over the last 10 years, we've made a lot of enhancements to our technology systems. I have to confess that our thrust really has been access, trying to make sure that people had access to technology, access to resources. And we've always had security in mind. But I think with the appointment of our DPO, we have really worked very hard to make sure that everything we're doing not only enhances the performance and the access of our systems, but keeps data secure. And so a few things that we'll point out here. The first is our dual data centers. We have data centers at both CNS and at the district office. And they allow us to balance the load, but also provide us with the comfort that if something happened to either of those locations, we could recover from a disaster. They're fully operational data centers. Multiple connections to the internet. We have at North Syracuse multiple connections to the RIC and to the web, World Wide Web, as well as the RIC has multiple connections. And what this ensures, as we're so dependent on technology today, that if something breaks down, we have alternate routes to access the internet. And the bottom left there, we talk about cloud-based services. We are using cloud-based services. Right now, our focus is with Office 365. All of our email is out in the cloud, as well as the Office suite of products. And we use Google for Education extensively in our classrooms. And we're considering expanding that, again, with the idea that we can provide remote 24/7 access to things in a very secure manner. Managing the traffic. We've upgraded all of our wireless access, and we've segregated out the guest traffic. And what that means is if someone comes to our district and they've got their own device, and they need internet access, we can provide that to them, but they can't get on our network. We limit access to our network to district-owned and controlled devices only. Partnerships, we're working with the RIC on a lot of things, and many of you can remember years ago, we've worked very closely with BOCES and the Central New York Regional Information Center in all of our projects. One of the things we're noting here is that we work with them on the backup of our data and the remote storage of that data. It's stored in multiple data centers using a product called Commvault. So again, we believe if anything ever happened, we'd have the ability to recover quickly. And then finally, upgrading our hardware. The district, as the board knows, through our equipment leases, through BOCES, through smart schools, through our software and hardware budgets, we have really spent a lot of money on technology, and we're systematically upgrading that technology at the end of its life to ensure that more vulnerable technology is replaced, which improves both security and performance. And that was something that years ago we didn't worry. Hey, if it still worked and we could upgrade it, we didn't worry about it so much. But the older technology just doesn't have the ability. We were talking about laptops today and some of our older laptops and that we're going to be taking out of service because they're just not as secure. And so we're making sure that we're keeping that technology up to date. It's much easier to support it and therefore keep it secure. And TJ, I don't know if I missed anything. Would you want to add anything to any of those slides? Okay, thank you.
We use Microsoft's System Center Configuration Manager and Lanesweeper and Google Management to help identify resources. So Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager, also known as SCCM, allows us to identify and manage Windows devices, Windows computers and laptops. SCCM scans and identifies Windows computers and software on them. It also allows us to manage them remotely. Lanesweeper is an automated inventory tool that also identifies computers and devices and the peripherals that are attached to them, such as monitors and printers and scanners. The Google Admin Console allows us to identify and manage our fleet of Chromebooks, both the physical devices and the apps that are allowed on them. Our EDLA data privacy agreements also catalog our software along with our BOCES COSERs, and we are partnering with MA Pulse for security, risk, and NIST assessments that will prioritize our tasks and requirements.
So in an age where users are highest risk, we need to try to manage that and train them and make them aware of all the threats that are out there. So 2 years ago, we put in ClassLink to help streamline access to different apps on the web that our staff use and students use. So now we're going to use another piece of software they have called OneSync. And what that's going to allow us to do is automate all account creation and deprovisioning when someone leaves. So once a student is registered and enters School Tool or a staff member is entered in WinCap, everything they need is automatically created that night. And when they're removed from School Tool or someone resigns or is terminated that night, all access will be removed as well. So that way we don't have a manual process and things being overlooked. So that way it just flows. Training awareness is the biggest thing we need to do. And with a product called Mimecast that we're getting that looks at email security, we're going to be able to send out phishing attempt emails to kind of help users understand, identify different things within those emails, along with videos that have follow-up questions that are about a minute long, and they're all around comedy to help the training and understand the threats that are out there in a more common everyday scenario. Limiting risk is a big thing. Physical is as important as digital. So all of our data centers and network closets need to be behind badged access doors. So as we go through and we're refreshing buildings or like Bear Road with the renovation, everything's being put behind a badge reader. Digital speaks more to what can a person do when they have a device? Are they allowed to install things, change things, access things? So we make sure that no one can get into anything they can't. And then even us in IT, we have separate accounts that we use so that our everyday account doesn't have rights to do something in case it gets compromised. Network design is critical with what can talk to each other. So when you're on an internal network, all of the computers, tablets, iPads, Chromebooks can all talk to each other. But we do have systems like our HVAC and our security cameras that are a little more risky because they might not receive updates as frequently. So we do have to build the network out to keep those devices from talking and seeing anything else. That way we limit our threat. Email security, that's where we're going to put Mimecast in. We signed on for a COSER this year with BOCES, and we're going to be starting that rollout next month. And that's going to be a lot better at filtering and catching emails. The last couple of months, we've had a few come through where people try to mimic our building principles and collect information. So with this system, that's going to crack down on that a lot more. And it also gives the ability with one click to remove any email from all of our users' inbox immediately. So that if there is something that's harmful out there, we can get rid of it quickly. Hardware lifecycle, Don did mention on this already, but we are going to a little expansion. So Windows devices, laptops, and desktops will have a 5-year life cycle, and then they'll have to be replaced and upgraded. Tablets, like iPads, can be used until they no longer receive updates from Apple. And Chromebooks have about a 6-year life cycle that's dictated by Google before they retire it. Data, DPA agreements, we're going to be working on those. We already have several, like Chris said, and Missy touched on, so we'll continue to obtain those. Third-party access control agreements. So right now we're waiting to get a new contract to start having our third-party contractors sign with any consulting companies like MA Pulse or ComSource or even Siemens, and that does our HVAC, or Day Automation that does our camera and control access. So that way, when they do access our systems to support or help set up, they're also in agreement with whatever they have access to. Backup systems are critical. Like Don said, we did do Commvault. So now we do have our data secure in multiple locations. And retention is a big thing as well. With on-site storage, it does cost more. So if we can go to the cloud, we'll be able to keep that data much longer at a lower cost and be able to meet those retention. With Mimecast, we can catalog all email that comes in and out and retain that forever. So that way we always have that if we ever need to reference back to anything.
So some of the stuff that I've been working on is more surrounded with threat detection. I'm sorry. Oh, it needs to be closer. Sorry. I speak loudly, so I just wouldn't want to be too loud. So we're utilizing a network monitoring system, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to kind of catalog and categorize our network events as either anonymous or legitimate. And then when we use that baseline, and we can use that to set a threshold, and then that threshold will be used to actively scan data on the network as it traverses our firewall to see if it's something malicious or something that's legitimately an intended data. That feature is built into our Cisco Firepower firewalls, and our firewall is basically our front door to the internet. So that's going to protect us from any kind of malicious traffic. It's going to close any ports that are maybe used by cybersecurity attacks or by malicious software. That's going to work hand in hand with an intrusion detection system that's built into our firewall system. What it does is it's going to detect any malicious code that's inside any of the data packets that's traversing our internet connection. The way it typically works is that when a cybersecurity threat happens, there's a payload on a PC. It's usually just what that payload does is it ends up making a connection to malicious servers that are out on the internet. By us having intrusion prevention and detection, it's going to stop that and block that front door so that malicious software can't download any more malicious data and the rest of its payload to do its job. We're also going to be implementing a new antivirus security software. We do have antivirus security software already in place. So the type of security software antivirus that we're using is just doing known threats and known malicious code. We're going to be implementing a new antivirus software, an additional layer to the one that we have. And what it'll be doing is it'll be scanning processes. So by scanning processes, what it does is it protects us from zero-day attacks. So zero-day attacks are going to be malicious code that are brand new in the wild, never been detected by antivirus software code. So the way antivirus software code works, it's going to scan for known files already. The process protection takes it the next step further and just looks for any malicious processes that might be happening that aren't normal to the system. In addition to that, we're going to be doing network security vulnerability scans. And what that's going to do is that's going to scan all of our devices on our network to see if there's any vulnerabilities that can be patched with an update. Those security services are going to be provided through us through a co-serve, and we'll be partnering with a local consulting company named MA Pulsey. They'll be performing the scans for us and providing reports, and then we can have remediation based upon those reports. TJ touched on this a little bit earlier, but we also have physical security monitors so that we can detect that there's a physical threat. If someone's broken into a secure door, we have those doors controlled by access key cards, and then if someone were to break into a door, they're monitored by cameras. And front doors, network security closets, server room doors, that type of stuff. So we're making sure that we have physical security as well as data security to mitigate any threats. The detection processes will defining roles and responsibilities to ensure who's responsible for what when a threat does happen. And then when a threat event does happen, we'll review those detection processes and see if there's any need for improvement. Periodically, we'll test those detection processes with a simulated payload on a test PC to make sure that our antivirus software is working properly and that the IDS is working properly. And then in the event that there isn't a cyber detection, we'll communicate that out so that people can be made aware of it, and basically to protect them from doing any harm if they were to see something that wasn't legitimate.
So what do we do when we detect a threat? How do we respond? First thing that we have in place prior to threat are policies and playbooks. Think of them as the what to do, right? Formal documentation that's available to all involved in the process of recovery from a threat. So we'll be creating and following IT policies that will be used for general workflows, changes, upgrades, things that happen on an everyday basis. And these aid in preventing cybersecurity events from happening in the first place. But we will also develop playbooks, which will help guide our response to specific issues like disaster recovery, system breaches, extended power outages, specific steps to take in certain cases. When a threat occurs, our next step in the response process is notification. Some notifications we receive, some we give to others. So an example of notifications we would receive are the automated alerts that allow us to perform preventative maintenance to occur before there's ever an issue, but also alerts that even enable us to discover early security threats before they become events. In the case of a significant breach, there would be notifications that we would give, formal communication to impacted users, which touched on that briefly. Also, perhaps, depending on the severity of the breach, invoking cybersecurity insurance coverage that is in place. And perhaps the most important is, what do you do after an event? In IT, we're always about root cause analysis. What was the cause? What was the vulnerability? And this is the why. Why did it happen? This allows us to reconfigure our systems to prevent similar events from occurring. And then, of course, revising our policies and our playbooks at the beginning of the process, right? Go back and revise those accordingly. Basically, that root cause analysis takes us back full circle, to the beginning of the process, right? With revised policies and playbooks so that similar events would not reoccur.
And then continuing, if a cybersecurity event were to occur, is we would want to talk about recovery. Like, how do we get ourselves out of harm's way? Again, it's defining procedures and policies so that they could be executed after a cybersecurity event, so you know what to do when it happens. And what this does is it takes out the guesswork. It takes out some of the work in a stressful situation where you're in the sky is falling type of situation. You know what to do. Well, I'm going to go grab the umbrella so I don't keep getting rained on anymore. To have that procedure pre-planned, it can be a lot more calculated, it can be a lot more precise, and it can be a lot more effective. And it takes the emotional part out of it. Improvements that we can make upon recovery is we can incorporate lessons that we've learned from cybersecurity events, hopefully not experienced by us, but they're very well publicized. They're in the news all the time. Fortune 500 companies are getting attacked. Anyone gets attacked. So what we can learn from that is just through communication, through knowledge share, and hopefully we can learn about that vicariously. And when we can take what was learned from those events and we can apply it to initiatives here. And to evolve our strategies, evolve and update what we're going to do after these events. And then again, communication is really important for us in IT. We just want to make sure that we're transparent, that we're communicating to all the stakeholders that were involved in a cybersecurity event, explain to them how we were going to recover their data and or recover their peace of mind being secure with using network and using data. And by doing that, we were going to restore our reputation after that event.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, and just to recap, we've talked to you a little bit about how we developed our infrastructure redundancy plan, how we've upgraded our servers and built in that redundancy. In 2020, we actually got the load balancing working, the redundant data centers. Dark Angelo is in the process of doing working with our audit committee on doing a complete comprehensive review of our IT. This is their second go around. They did this in 2016. They made some recommendations. We took actions on those recommendations. They're going back through now, and obviously a lot's changed in the world and here at North Syracuse since 2016. And we expect to get new recommendations from them. We've mentioned multiple times MA Pulse's security risk vulnerability audit that they're going to be doing. And if I had to compare those two, the MA Pulse is going to be a much more granular process than the Dark Angelo process, which will be more of an overview. But either way, we expect to implement the auditor and consultant recommendations over the next couple of years, working closely with our audit committee to prioritize those things. We've made a lot of progress. We feel really good about where we are, but there's always more to be doing because we're, those characters that are trying to infiltrate our system are out there, and we just have to stay that much more vigilant to protect our users and their data. And so that's the recap. Questions?
Any questions?
Oh, do you have? Go ahead. Our questions are probably similar. Hi, I work in the financial service industry, and we've been doing these types of things for a long time. So I'm very, very happy to see that we are implementing these changes to protect the data. One thing that I was wondering, with all the Chromebooks and things out there, I mean, how are you going to make sure that you're going to push any like upgrades or patches to them? Do they have to reboot them, or are there complicated steps that they have to do in order to get the protection for their device?
So most of the products that we have are fully automated, so the users will never know anything's happening. So the process on a Chromebook will happen when they turn off or shut down for the day, and all of our Windows devices, it'll happen overnight during maintenance hours. So our users should never have to worry or know about it, and we get reports on which failed or which worked. So we can follow up the remediation based on those reports to see if there are clients with issues.
And if they don't turn it off?
If they don't turn it off,
Yeah.
it'll force it eventually.
Okay.
There will be a countdown and it'll go.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Same as Mary had said, financial services industry, we do an individual cybersecurity audit every single year per computer, per user, that goes over the things that people shouldn't be doing, what they shouldn't be plugging into the computer, what they shouldn't be plugging the computer into to charge it in either direction, either the extra device or the device itself. Are those reminders happening, or how often are those reminders happening for individual users?
So a lot of these processes are new for this district. So we're going to be communicating those out and working with individual buildings and going out there to some of the buildings to have the staff meetings. So we've been going to those and discussing those too ahead of time, but we'll have a lot of communication and working with the building, the principal, our tech TAs in the building as we roll this out, because there will be things that we do have to find solutions for. But a lot of the common things with like USB flash drives is the biggest thing. But with all the Google Docs and cloud storage we have, there's easy ways to teach users how to take advantage of other things we have to get around those barriers as we start to remove that access.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that people don't know. I know that Mary and I go through the training pretty intensely about the things you should and should not do, which we try to relay to the people that we know. And so many people are just completely unaware of how you charge the computer that you're using. It's incredibly important. Is there a way to get that out to them ASAP? Because it should have probably been out to them already. Great, thank you.
I have one more. So you mentioned going to send out communications to test people, like phishing emails, that sort of thing. Will that just be for staff or for students as well? Okay. Okay, yeah, because it's important to teach about that.
Yeah, so we could actually make this a teaching point.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, one point that's worth. Yeah. One thing worth mentioning, and I'm sure the board's aware of it, that Chris rolled out that online data privacy and security awareness training that all of us had to take. So, that's an important part of the process of making sure all of our staff are aware of the things that we need to be doing to keep our data and others' data safe.
And on top of that, Don, the other thing that Chris and I discussed was adding just that piece with new teacher orientation so that everybody that comes in, there's an onboarding process.
Okay, any other questions? If not, then thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, I always have questions. Okay. Don, you said, when was the last time you had an audit?
We had the guys from Dark Angelo here in 2016. They didn't release the results, I don't think, till 18. By
Right.
the time they got everything done, but that was the timing of when our last IT audit was done.
And is there a rotation on this audit scheduled now?
Well, so the
Or-
audit committee goes through, works with Dark Angelo on our internal control audit. I'll let them speak to that, but they look at all the risk areas, and IT has come up. They've looked at payroll and they've looked at different areas, grants and whatnot. And so IT now has come up for the second time as a high risk area that needs to be reviewed.
The MA Policy Service is also a yearly thing that we're going to be doing with BOCES. So we'll have those audits and vulnerability scanning done yearly now with that service.
Right. Okay, and your playbooks, you're talking about all this backup and redundancy and everything else. I assume there's a schedule for actually going through a hot run on those, right? Instead of the day it happens is we haven't done one of these in 3 years. How we're doing this, you can read all you want, but walking through it is a lot different.
Yeah, so before, as we just put a lot of these systems in last year and a half, we've done a few individual testing of recovery and restoring servers. And now we're going to try to go into a quarterly or semi-annually full recovery on a scheduled time to test everything out.
Thank you.
Yep, yeah, and off the top of my head, I couldn't give you a clue as to what board meeting it was, and maybe Connie can help us, but we had the presentation from Dark Angelo, and we had the kind of was a dashboard with the little check boxes, and it did identify what we were going to go through in the cycle the next time through. I don't know if that's something we could look up, but if you want to see it. But it wasn't too long ago, correct? Yeah. So. Okay, thank you. And next we have our special education presentation.
And Val, if you can just make sure that the microphone.
Is it? It's a PDF. Oh, you probably didn't want to open it Word. Just click on it one more time. double click on it, just see what happens. There you go. It should come up. And then do we need to share? Do we need to share the? Do we need to hit share? Yes. Do you have it? Yeah. All right. Let me just, I just want to make sure people at home.
You can press the button on that mic so it lights up green. There you go.
All right. All right, so here we're going to start again. So, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having Karen and I join you this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Valerie DeFlorio. I'm the Executive Director for Pupil Personnel, formerly known as the Executive Director for Diverse and Student Learning, formerly known as the Director of Special Education, and formerly known as the Assistant Director of Special Education in the North Syracuse Central School District. So all the while throughout my whole career, always doing special education as my main duties here for the district.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Williams, and I'm the Director of the elementary programs. So, hello, everyone.
So our goal tonight is just to kind of walk you through special education, where we are right now. I think it's been maybe 6-7 years since the last time we've been able to be here to present to you. So we kind of wanted to take this opportunity. We've had some new members come on board, and we just kind of wanted to walk you through who we are and what we do and where we're at. Oops. Oops. Okay, this is not going to go well. Yeah.
Down.
Here we go. Okay. What?
These arrows right here.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. See, this was all set up differently on my computer earlier today. So we're going to start with our philosophy. So our philosophy is pretty basic. It is that students with disabilities are general education students first, who require special education as a service. And we pretty much hold true to that. So what we do really strive for is that all our students are in the gen ed setting and that they're receiving the general education curriculum as their curriculum. That is what we strive for because that is what guides us. And then from there, they receive their special education as a service so that they can access that curriculum, so that they can achieve what they need to through their services. In order for us to do that, we make sure that our students are grouped based upon their grouped accordingly through their academic achievement, functional performance and learning, social development, physical development, and management needs. So this slide is pretty powerful. This slide really is our backbone. And there's a lot in here. And with special education, for those of you who aren't very well versed in it, there's a lot of lingo. There's a lot of regulation that goes into it. So we tried to keep this as user friendly as we could. But pretty much what this means is that when we are looking at how we are grouping our students, we really try to ensure that when they are in the places that they need to be, that they're with their peers, learning at the same rates with each other in the classes that they need to be at. And we really strive for that. Which takes us to the least restrictive environment. And this again, this is so important. So again, a very big definition on least restrictive environment. But what it boils down to is when we look at students and where they fit, how students are served, So their placement of students with disabilities, whether they're in special classes, whether in the gen ed setting, is that based upon the use of supplementary aids services, making sure that they are there to their maximum extent appropriate. And it kind of brings me back to, and I have to bring Bob Crabtree into this. I remember when Bob was a teacher, and we used to have great conversations, and I was the assistant director at the time. And every time, he'd come into a student, we'd talk about students and their needs and stuff, and we'd always have these conversations. So I giggle sometimes when we come to this, because there's some great conversations that we had where Bob was really advocating for his students. And I'd be on the other side of the table saying, okay, Bob, what do you think this child needs? What do you think? And it's interesting because when you have teachers come to the table, their lens, what they see and what they believe the child needs, it's so important. So we have to make sure that for that child, not this, where you see at the very bottom of the slide, this is not a one size fits all model when addressing addressing the individual needs. That is so key, because we have to ensure that the students are in their least restrictive environment. Again, back to that maximum extent appropriate, because some students can stay in the general education setting all day long. But there are some students who may need to go to a smaller class size, and they need to be taught by a special education teacher because they can't handle that curriculum. They can't handle that pace of that classroom. They can't handle that intense. Sometimes we have students with emotional issues that are not regulated for the day, and they can't stay focused. So we need to maybe bring them back to a separate class to be able to regulate them, to bring them back. And that's all okay. That's what least restrictive environment means, to the maximum extent appropriate.
I think one of the things that's really important to know when you're looking at least restrictive environment, at least for an education, our committee, is that we always try to be driven by the data that's presented at the table in terms of determining that least restrictive environment. So oftentimes we're hearing from the teachers, you're hearing from the parents who are at committee, and you're also looking at the data that has been presented by the school psychologist in terms of making your decision. And we really take, I think, as a committee, a really hard look at what is the best for that student. What is the programming that best meets the needs of the students that are in front of us? Next
Which now leads us to what New York State lays out for their continuum of services. So the least restrictive would be the consultant teacher services, and they can be direct and or indirect. And what this is where we have our special education teacher in teaching students with disabilities in the general education setting. Students receive specially designed instruction from a special education teacher in the gen ed setting. Then the next level would be resource room. And that's where a special education teacher has the ability, they can stay in the classroom or they can remove the child from that classroom. But this is more of a skill-based service. This is students who can access the content, but need more support on skills. And that's the difference between the two, but more so resource is a pullout where consultant teacher is in the classroom. You have your related services, which is your speech therapist, your occupational therapist, physical therapist, vision. Those are types of related services. We also have a level on the continuum, which is the integrated co-teaching, and that's optional. New York State makes that optional because the caveat with this is you can only have 12 students with an IEP in the classroom. So a district our size, we're a little too large to just strictly stay with that level of the continuum. And then we have special class. So we have all of these levels of the continuum that New York State has outlined in Part 200 regulations. Now, what does that mean to us in the North Syracuse Central School District? Good question. Here we go. This is what it means to us. So North Syracuse offers everything in the continuum because of that commitment to the least restrictive environment. And that kind of is pretty nice when we have a district our size, that we're able to offer the gamut of the continuum for students, K through 12. So as you take a look at this slide, you'll see our buildings K4. We have the consultant teacher direct. We are, and you'll see the asterisk next to resource. And it's important to understand that there was a time period for 6 years that resource was removed from the continuum in that area. So now we're coming back to aligning itself in the continuum. There was a move where recommendations for resource couldn't be made. However, we are now bringing that back at that level. We have 3 811 special classes, and I put SC in parentheses for the rest of the other buildings where you see SC, it does mean special class. And then you'll see that we have them at Rocks L and Smith Road. At the middle schools, we offer CTD, resource, and special classes. Same with the junior high and high school. Yeah, sure, Paul, yeah. Correct. Mhm. So indirect is primarily the conversation between the classroom teacher and to the special ed teacher. Correct, right. The other thing I want everyone to know, and I did not put this on here, is that we have related services K-12. So they're scattered throughout everywhere. That is, we offer that K-12. That means that we have speech, OT, PT, teacher of the visually impaired, all of those related services all throughout K-12. So they're offered in all the buildings. Yep.
What happens on the 811 programs? It's K4. Is there a vision that is going to continue on up, or is the vision that they actually go to BOCES?
Nope. So when you slide over to 5-7 at Rocks Middle, they become 1211. So developmentally, we believe that capping at 811 due to their level of immaturity and not being able to regulate so well. So we try to keep our classes smaller at the elementaries. Then by the time they move to the middle school, they feed to Rocks Middle. So we have the 1211 program. So those 4th graders will go to 5th grade at Rocks Middle in our 1211 program. And so that's our feeder. And then from there, they go to the junior high, and then from there, they go to high school. Yep. So it's a nice feeder, and we keep them at, like we said, at 811 at the elementaries for that developmental work on social coping, emotional strategies until they can get to the middle school where they're a little bit older. They have a little bit more handle where we can increase our class size to 12. So I thought this was a really nice slide to show you guys where we've been and where we're going. So when I started here, this was the year that I started, and this is kind of why I wanted to show you this. Throughout the years in our office, we've worked very hard to keep our identification rate been pretty consistent. And just so you're aware, as this identification rate has remained consistent, our enrollment rate has significantly dropped. So it's hard in our district to try to lower our identification, but we've stayed pretty consistent. 15% is what New York State looks at. And once you get above 15%, you kind of are at risk for looking at audits. The state wants to come in and wonder, why is your identification rate exceeding that? So here you'll see throughout the years, we've remained pretty consistent. And right around here, we've shot up to 15%. So there was a drastic increase during this time right here. And we went from around 11 right up to 15%. We're currently at 15.1%. So there was a shift in how services were being delivered. And during this time right here, this is where there was a subcommittee that was put in place, and they were making the decisions for special education. So this is where you'll see that increase happened, is where that started to take off, is when during those time, that 5-year span. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So that, yeah. So there is a give and take, but for the most part, we've maintained. And there's a lot of things that occurred in here too. We're hoping that this increase here is going to start to decrease significantly again. We have, we were having, and we'll get to that slide when we get there. But right now, the conversations that we're having with people, also with our AIS that's being put in place, with the new literacy programs that are being implemented. So we know change takes 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years sometimes. So what we're hoping is that with the implementation of AIS, because all this was done without really any formal AIS. So our teachers in special ed have done a really nice job at, putting things in place, sitting and working really hard with students. Everybody has, not just special ed, but I'm here to represent special ed tonight. Working without a lot of interventions, formal interventions, so that we're hoping now over the next couple of years, we'll start to see Ames Web Plus be implemented with a new literacy program.
So what Val is trying to let you know is that I'm working with Greg Stone and the RTI process and tier 1 instruction, that those interventions prior will help support reducing the identification rate.
We're excited. We're, and the communication in both the departments, it's incredible. It's been very nice. Yeah. So moving forward, we've been holding roundtable discussions this summer, refining roles and responsibilities of the special education teacher. We're moving towards 1 special education per grade level, and that was great that, through the budget proposal, the backing that you guys have given, bringing resource back into the continuum of services so that it's not a blanket type of service anymore for students at the elementary level. At our high school, our secondary level, we're providing opportunities that allow students with disabilities multiple pathways for graduation. It's so nice to see the different levels of students who are able to graduate with the different types of diplomas. And just, we're excited. Things are put in place and we're moving forward. So thank you for that, because that's you guys being able to support us in doing that. Special ed is a lot, like I said, a lot of regulations and a lot of things that are complex. We try to make this more user-friendly, but are there any questions or concerns tonight from you guys? Sure.
Do you have many incidences of students having several services, like indirect teacher and then resource? And I mean, is there students that are kind of getting a couple of teacher services?
Like a
as
hybrid
needed?
model?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So at the elementary level, usually based on when we have our committees, we'll start off with a CTD model. And as we look through the data, that's when we start to consider whether or not we want to build upon a CTD with a resource. There are times we find that maybe both of those programs aren't manageable enough for our students, and we might move to some of those special classes. So those are, at least at the elementary level, some of the hybrid that you might see, a combination of CTD, a combination of resource, usually that I can speak of. I don't know if this secondary level.
So we do, absolutely. We haven't been able to in the past 5 to 6 years at the elementary, because like I said, resource wasn't an option. So it's been all CTD. So that's why some of these great roundtable discussions have been great, because we're starting to talk about, well, what does a resource student look like again? What does a CTD student look like? And how would that look throughout the day? When would that happen? So we're having some great conversations. The roundtable discussions have been aha moments. Like teachers are sitting there going, oh my gosh. And it has been really, it's been great having these discussions. And that's why it's refining roles and responsibilities of that special ed teacher. Secondary, we've been rocking and rolling with the resource teachers, with the special educate, with the CTD teachers all along.
How come, and I'm sorry, just because I'm
That's
kind
okay.
of new
Sure.
and finding my way in
Right.
here. How come resource was done away with? What was the philosophy with that?
There was a philosophical belief with the consultants that came in, that was by pulling kids out of the classroom, that was violating their rights to be in there, and that it wasn't part of the continuum. So there was this feeling that that wasn't an appropriate use of how to serve the students. They wanted everybody in the gen ed setting at all times. So at the elementary, it was a very rare recommendation. It was a very rare use of recommendation. That recommendation was very rare that could be done at the elementary.
Mrs. Kramer, what we could do is, I think we can set up a meeting with either myself or Val and go through that in detail to give you all the background and information.
Sure, that sounds great. I love that you guys are just kind of looking at like what's great, like what does the child need?
Yeah.
And you're seeing the value of kids coming into the classroom and getting, you know,
Yep.
as much as you can, but then you're also saying there is value in
Mhm.
some pull out small group
Absolutely.
instruction. That's, so you guys are kind of doing a hybrid, so I'm glad to hear that.
Mhm. Well, and it all, again, I want to say it all goes back to this slide right here. The least restrictive environment. It all goes back to that, where one size does not fit all. You know, it's not, it has to be based on that student's need. And because of that, New York State has the continuum all the way through to special class, you know, and that's why we have that, we offer that throughout the district.
Dave London, I didn't ask you a question because I always ask him one. I just want to say, I started in this building in 1971, and there was a special needs class where the students were all in one room. They were older. And in 1972 was the first resource teacher hired at North Syracuse, because I remember her coming down to my room. So that's where the program started in 72. Doesn't matter if it's Rosemary, Olander, Val de Floria, our special needs program in the school district is second to none. I've heard that whether I'm at BOCES or whether I've gone to conferences in New York State, we're well known for the type of program we have in the school district. We should be very, very proud of our program. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you, Bob. Our teachers, I hope can hear that because they work really, really hard, very hard. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys very much for tonight. We appreciate being here with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Okay, at this time, we'll have comments from the audience. We have one person signed up. Yep. It's on my. Oh, it's on my board. That's new. It's been so long since we've had comments. I'm sorry. So we have Victoria Lewis from CNY Informed. If you could come forward, please. Thank you very much. I believe Mrs. Gibson sent you the rules. Just want to know here in North Syracuse, we do limit you to 3 minutes, and she'll have a timer going on that.
I timed it earlier.
Okay, great.
Good evening.
Thank you.
you. My name is Victoria Lewis, and I'm a retired educator, so I know how hard all of you work. I graduated from Cicero High School and have resided in the village of North Syracuse for 25 years. I'm a wife, mother of 3 adults, and grandmother of 12, soon to be 13 grandchildren. I am also a member of CNY Informed, the organization which recently mailed your superintendent, Dr. Bowles, a packet filled with evidence against mask mandates for school children. I am not here tonight to speak against the unscientific and horrendous practice of masking children for hours on end. I am also not here to speak against mandatory vaccines for a virus with a survival rate of 99%. Nor am I here to speak out against compartmentalized sex ed or critical race theory. These are all fires to be put out, so to speak, but we'll have to wait for another time. Tonight, I'd like to address an issue or policy which I believe is detrimental to the district. And that is the district's lack of effort to be a transparent body which invites the input of parents, grandparents, and taxpayers in general. During the month of July, I, along with many others in our organization, have been attending Board of Education meetings in both Onondaga and Oswego County. Not one of these meetings has required permission in the form of an email which predates the actual assembly, Not one of these other districts has physically locked out concerned adults from attending these meetings. Yet sadly, North Syracuse has done just this. We no longer have an emergency in this county. We are no longer under limited capacity for gatherings. Therefore, I cannot understand why you would be engaging in such a practice. I'm sure, or would like to be assured, that there is nothing nefarious behind this policy, that you desire to share with the parents and guardians of all the children in this district what it is you have planned for them, either in curriculum or policy. Yet locked doors and notification by email prior to the meeting speak of anything but. I hope I am wrong. I encourage you all to understand that we lend you those who are most precious to us, those in whom we have a 100% vested interest. We also pay your salaries and the costs of running a large district. Please do not lock us out of this dialogue. You willingly take the money from the government and us taxpayers, which makes you beholden to them. It's time to be beholden to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as always, please, if you want to submit anything in writing to Mrs. Gibson, she'll make sure the board gets that. Okay, thank you. Okay, Board of Education Committee reports. Do we have any reports today? Not at this time. I did not think so. So we'll go right to the superintendent comments. Mr. Bowles.
Thank you. This past week, we had Senator Mannion and Al Sturpey have a press conference at the North Syracuse Early Education Program. Mr. Mannion, Senator Mannion is looking to pass a bill that will help 4410 programs with their funding. There was additional funding for UPK programs, but for 4410 programs, the formula still is inadequate, and the students there are most vulnerable. And so that press conference went on, and it was a wonderful opportunity to help support our local legislators. Also, we've had data security questions and concerns, and I do want to just commend the people that were here in front of you and thank them, because we have had some things come our way. And when people are trying to scam us, they will try to address administrators or someone where people on the other end will think, oh, I need to provide them this information. And the team that we have been top notch, and they have thwarted many things along the way. So I do want to just acknowledge their efforts. I do want to let you know that we've been contacted by the Route 81 corridor concerns, and they want to hold a meeting at our junior high in September. So we have a large venue. So I did want to just let you know that we'll be holding a meeting for that issue in the fall. With transportation, we've 12 new drivers, bus drivers are in training. So we're trying to add more to the fleet. And with IT, we had many Chromebooks go out the past year. We've had at least 96% collection back, and to be able to help service, and that was above what we thought. So our students, our families in the IT department have done a phenomenal job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Board of Education comments. Anything for the good of the order here this evening? Yes, Mr. Crabtree.
I had the privilege last week, as I told you last board meeting, my concern about right across the street with Hinder Waters. And last week was the Town of Clay meeting, which I attended with lots of people. One item that came up, which I brought up, was a concern, is the solar farm that is going to be on Verplank Road. And I was told it's not a community solar, therefore they will be paying taxes. That's my concern. I don't know how many of you read this article in the Post Standard, Stop Siphoning School Revenue. Many, and I am not against businesses being built in this community or any other community, but for the Liverpool School District to have this Amazon placed in their district, and they get $71 million tax breaks, and the school was not notified or talked about it. Being a member of BOCES, 2 years ago, when Mr. McMahon first became county executive, I asked him, did you reach out? And because our school of special needs kids, hundreds of them, is right across from this, and they're not interested. So you need to read this article, because what it's saying is we need a seat at the table. School districts need a seat on the table when businesses move in and they're getting all these tax breaks, which they should not get. And then my final thing, of course, is across the street, which is very close to our school district, where they're considering building an auto store and a supermarket and apartments, and putting another traffic light out here by Rockland Drive. And the gentleman was there that represents the builders, and he said, quote, "It will only take 30 seconds to get out on TF Road." And somebody from Fay Park said, "Well, you must come out at 2 a.m. because there's no way. Any of you have tried getting out, you know, thank God we have a light here for us to get out for that." So the vote on that will be probably our next board meeting. So I won't be able to attend because I would like to attend, but let's find out what's going to happen, because I see it affecting our junior high district office and this whole corridor. So thank you for letting me talk about that, but please read this article, because it is time that the school districts do take a place at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kruger.
Well, my note is far lighter. We mentioned, or I mentioned often, the canteen, and Tony Broccoli has been a student of the district and helped build the canteen from just this very small building to now what they have their own. And she has put her heart and soul into helping the kids and quite literally saved countless lives in her role. Tony has decided to retire. I know, we're all like, wait, Amy Crowley is taking over for Tony. Big shoes to fill, but she's doing a great job. The canteen is looking to memorialize Tony's, I don't even know how many years that she's been with the canteen, but it won't quite, Amy's wonderful, but it just won't quite be the same without Tony. We're looking to put a bench. She won't accept much more, but we're looking to put a bench out front of the canteen with her name on it. If anybody is interested in helping Amy put this together, also Parks Department, and her name escapes me, but is also helping put that together. But reach out to Amy, see if there's anything that you want to do to help memorialize this phenomenal woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. And I'm just going to add, and I'll make it brief because I have a 6-page notes here that I'm going to, I actually do, that I'm going to put into text or some kind of Google Doc. I attended a NISBA law conference last week, and what I did is took notes, and I wanted to supply for you in writing just a quick review of what was discussed. I should be careful what I say here, but it was a presentation. It was a day-long thing. It was a presentation by all attorneys, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was halfway decent, because I've been through attorney presentations before, and they can be brutal. Again, I'd love to talk about a lot of the topics, but I'll submit them to you, and certainly have any questions or anyone wants to see some of the details on it. They just talked about a lot of what's coming down the road, or potentially coming down the road, from SEL to, U.S. Department of Health and state ed guidelines for reopening, and some scary discussion on what's going on with regards to the Delta variant. So I'm going to be away the rest of this week, but I will get that to you before the next board meeting. Okay, thank you. Please, for consideration of approval of the minutes of the Board of the organizational meeting and the regular meeting of July 12th, 2021. If I get a motion from Ms. Scanlon, second from Ms. Kruger. And the Special Board of Education for July 13th also, sorry. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. I'd like a motion for both B and C, the consideration, classification, and placement of the preschool disabled children, and for the placement of the students in home instruction. Motion from Ms. Scanlon, second from Dr. Kramer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is, those two, B and C is carried. Number 6, discussion action items, a motion for A, please. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Ms. Scanlon. Any discussion, the committee assignments, I believe if you looked at board docs, you saw those. I tried to honor as best as good. Michael and I discussed, tried to honor as best we could the first choices. Just want to see if there's any discussion on those. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, thank you. That is carried. And item B, the cancellation of the August 9th Board of Education meeting and establishing August 16th as the next meeting date of the Board of Education. Motion, please. Motion from Ms. Kruger, second from Xavier Moody Wuzick. Mr. Moody Wuzick. I'm working on it. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I'd like to lump together C, D, and E. If I get a motion to put those three together, motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Ms. Kruger. And these are changes that we've read about in Friday letters with regards to staffing for C, D, and E. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Crabtree.
I want to thank Dr. Leahy for all his work on this and the support of the administration to make class sizes low. And thank you for the first grade at Cicero, and I'm not sure which one Gillette is, what grade level, but thank you, because years ago, the class size at the middle school was 28 and 29 when Dan was a principal at Roxborough. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no other discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Those items are carried. Item F, the increase of the pay for the food service substitutes. If I get a motion for that, motion from Ms. Scanlon, second from Mr. Thorne. Any discussion on that? I think we've heard about that. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item G, scoreboard sponsorship. A motion, please place that before us. Motion from Mrs. Scanlon, second from Mr. Moody Wuzick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we have an acknowledgement of a gift, but we also have an amendment to an acknowledgement of a gift. If I could place both A, H, and J together with a motion for that, please. Motion from Mrs. Kruger, second from Dr. Kramer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Those items are carried. And surplus of marketable and non-marketable goods, a motion place that before us. A motion from Mrs. Scanlon, second from Ms. Kruger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Instructional personnel report A, motion to place that before us. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Mrs. Scanlon. That's before us. Any discussion on A? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And a motion to put support staff B, personnel report. Motion from Mr. Herman, second from Ms. Kruger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And administrative personnel report, place that before us. Motion from Mr. Crabtree, second from Dr. Kramer. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll make a motion for executive session. Motion moving for the purpose of reviewing 2 legal matters relative to potential litigation and to review the employment history of 5 individuals with no action to follow. If I could get a second, please. Second from Mr. Moody Wuzick. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are in executive session. If I get a motion to adjourn the regular meeting. Motion, Mr. Thorne, second from Mrs. Scanlon. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We are adjourned 7:18. Thank you very much.